Up on Network Africa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa warns that the coronavirus outbreak will get worse even as lockdown measures are to be eased. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo hints at easing restrictions in the country in a bid for normalcy. Plus, Africa commemorates Africa Day, the founding of the Organization of Africa Unity, which was created 57 years ago in Ethiopia. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. Eid celebrations dominated headlines over the weekend as Muslims all around the world celebrated the end of the fasting month of Ramadan. Here's a summary on the stories and happenings.
This weekend, millions across Africa celebrated a slightly different Eid al-Fitr, with the spread of COVID-19 scaling back festivities. The festival marks the end to the Muslim month of fasting, where people typically gather to celebrate.
Ordinarily, we have to go to places to enjoy the Salah, but due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we have to stay at home and observe it with our family.
Eid al-Fitr begins with the sighting of the crescent moon, signaling the beginning of the 10th month of the lunar Islamic calendar, Shawwal, and the end of Ramadan. Countries where it was visible on Friday night celebrated on Saturday, but some other countries like Nigeria waited until Sunday, May 24th. The West African country has more than 7,500 cases and over 200 deaths, with most of the cases in Lagos, sub-Saharan Africa's biggest city with some 20 million people. Egyptian Muslim worshippers who usually converge onto the streets to mark the beginning of the Eid al-Fitr holiday were confined to their homes on Sunday as the coronavirus restrictions have closed mosques and emptied streets. On the same occasion last year, which marks the end of the month-long fast of the holy month of Ramadan, the streets of Cairo suburb were overflowing with families. But this year, Egypt has imposed a lockdown, banning public gatherings, including Eid prayers. As of Sunday, the country brought forward the start of its curfew by 4 hours to 5 p.m. and shut down public transport for 6 days.
We begin our coronavirus coverage with the top figures from Africa. The continent has recorded 112,000 cases. From that figure, more than 45,000 have recovered, and the death toll stands at over 3,300. South Africa still has the highest number of cases in Africa with 22,583. It's followed by Egypt with 17,265. Then Algeria, 8,306. In West Africa, Nigeria has recorded more than 7,800 cases, followed by Ghana, which has seen 6,808 cases. Meanwhile, the countries with the most fatalities are Egypt with 764, Algeria 600, and South Africa 429. Well, South Africa's president is warning that the country's coronavirus outbreak is going to get much worse, while announcing that lockdown measures are to be eased. Cyril Ramaphosa said a third of the country's more than 22,000 cases had been recorded in the last week. Despite that, the president said the current lockdown could not be sustained indefinitely. He announced that from the 1st of June, more restrictions would be lifted. Mr. Ramaphosa was speaking after a mining company in South Africa said 164 workers at a gold mine near Johannesburg had tested positive for coronavirus. So far, 429 COVID-19 deaths have been recorded in the country.
As scientists had predicted, the infections in our country have now started to rise sharply. 1/3 of the cumulative confirmed cases were recorded in the last week alone. And we should expect that these numbers will rise even further and even faster. Various models have been built by model builders to predict the trajectory of the virus and to help inform our planning and budgeting. These models tell us two important things. Firstly, that the coronavirus pandemic in South Africa is going to get much worse before it gets better. Secondly, and most importantly, they tell us that the duration, scale, and impact of the pandemic depends on our actions as a society and on our behavior as individuals. By following basic defense practices, we can reduce both the number of infections and the number of deaths.
Meanwhile, teachers in South Africa want the planned reopening of schools on the 1st of June to be halted. Local media quotes Educators Union of SA General Secretary Sipiwe Mungoso saying that they will file a court application on Monday against the Department of Basic Education. The DBE had announced that grade 7 and grade 12 will reopen school Monday next week. School premises are already being cleaned and sanitized ahead of the planned reopening. Teachers say the ministry's position that protective gear will be issued cannot be trusted and the rates of infections are still high. The Teachers Union last week sent a letter to the Education Ministry asking officials to reconsider the plan to reopen schools. Well, let's get more on the situation in South Africa. Our bureau chief joins us live from Johannesburg. Hello, Betty. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you, and happy Africa Day.
Happy Africa Day to you as well. South African government is planning to ease the lockdown measures, but the president is also warning that the worst is still ahead. How does one reconcile these two things?
Well, I guess it's better to plan for the worst case scenario than to just believe that things will get better soon enough. The president is being advised by scientists and researchers, and he had said this earlier, that if not for the lockdown, especially level 5, which slowed down the movement of the people or reduced the mingling of people, according to the projections of the scientists, we would have been at probably 80,000 or more at this point. So he said it all in that clip you cut out, but they've been trying to strike a balance between lives and livelihoods, or health, safety, and the economy. They've admitted that it's not sustainable to keep people on lockdown. But so now, as you open up the economy, people will move around the more. And I think you heard him, or you said something about the mining sector. It's not just one mine. Several mining companies have recorded infections, and some industries as well that were open much earlier. So this is a situation that but they've been able to plan within the lockdown time. They've been able to beef up health intervention capacity. Many field hospitals have been many of the conference centers as well have been turned into field hospitals, and they've been able to put structures in place to at least be able to deal to some extent the worst case scenario, which include the deployment of more troops. Remember, at the time, about 73,000 members of the South African National Defence Force in different fields were brought out to help.
Indeed. Now, from the president's latest speech, what are the citizens saying? Do South Africans think, the president is doing enough in this fight?
I'll ask you. there's no country where people would think the government is doing enough. So some people are happy about some things, some people are unhappy about others, and there are people who are not happy with anything. Here you have the opposition leaders who are saying, okay, you're ready to open up the economy a little more, but it's too late. And you have those who are not part of the people who are permitted to now go into level 3. They are unhappy about it. Now you can buy alcohol, but you cannot buy cigarette legally. So those ones are up in arms. So people are complaining, and there are also regular citizens who are saying, okay, allowing some of the people we spoke with, allowing alcohol at this time is not healthy, it's not a good idea, or opening of schools is not a good idea. There are those who are saying, oh, if we're returning to work, we have to have a place send our children to, so schools should open. So not everybody is happy with everything, but hey, government is just trying to strike a balance, and we'll get more clarity on the regulations or the guidelines for the next level. That's level 3, beginning the 1st of June. But people have something to complain about, and some are a bit happier.
Yeah, I'm sure one of those who are unhappy, the Educators Union of South Africa, they say they will file a court application against the planned reopening of schools. What more can you tell us about that?
All right. About half an hour ago, I spoke to the president of that union, that's Mr. Spelobengu, who said, look, we gave them 5 p.m. today. That's 5 p.m. local time. That's about now. That's the deadline they gave the Department of Basic Education or the minister to turn around that decision to open up schools. Remember, the decision was by the National Command Council, not just the Department of Education. So he says the legal team has written to the department to turn around that decision. After 5 p.m. local time, which has passed now, they will now know what to do. We expect one of their leaders to speak on local TV in about an hour to tell us what next they want to do. But they're not even the biggest teachers union. You still have SADTU who are worried. They're watching from afar. In some provinces where they see they're not comfortable with probably the efforts or the plans being made to ensure that teachers teaching safety, they're telling, like in Limpopo province, they're telling them, please do not go to work. You remember the directive was that teachers will resume today, and then the pupils, grades 7 and 12, will resume on Monday. So they're watching. We followed the MEC for basic education today to some of the schools where they're being cleaned and being prepared. There are complaints here and there, and he admits that there are also issues. Some places they've been to give some of the packs, the health safety packs, like the sanitizer and all that. They've met resistance from local contractors as well, who are saying, why do you want to give contracts for supply of these things to bigger companies when we're here? So these are some of the things. They're getting police escort to take them around. But hey, we're looking at, the president has signed off on it. So June the 1st, we expect grades 7 and 12 to return to school. I guess it's work in progress. There will still be problems, and they're saying as it comes, we'll try to improve. The other schools, the other levels will stay back at home, and then for some schools that I know, they'll be going to school to collect, the parents will go to school to collect school packs for the work that they will be doing at home. But EUSA, or the Educators Union of South Africa, we're waiting to see their next move, what they will say this evening as the deadline has passed. Maybe they will still be heading to court on Monday.
All right, then, our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, thank you so much for speaking to us. We do hope all things turn out for the better. Thanks again.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Well, Ghana's President, Nana Akufo-Addo, has hinted at easing restrictions, citing the need for normalcy. The president said consultations will be concluded this week, and he will subsequently announce a roadmap for easing the restrictions. The president said the plan to ease these restrictions was based on the low fatality rates. So far, Ghana has confirmed 6,617 cases and 31 deaths, according to the World Health Organization. Mr. Akufo-Addo said the number of severe cases that required hospitalization and ventilation support had also remained consistently low. Ghana had imposed a 3-week lockdown on 3 major cities identified as coronavirus hotspots in March. the president lifted the lockdown, but extended the ban on public gatherings that include Ghanaian elaborate funerals, church services, and schools. The president is now considering further easing of these restrictions. Well, you're watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Still ahead on the program. Get ready for the first of its kind, a star-studded virtual concert to mark the Africa Day and raise funds for the continent. Welcome back to the program. Zambia's Information Minister, Dora Siliya, has said that most of her contacts have been tested positive after she was diagnosed with COVID-19. The minister, who announced her test result via Twitter on Saturday, had urged everyone she had come in contact with to cooperate with health officials to keep everyone else safe. Ms. Siliya said she was asymptomatic and was self-isolating with close monitoring by medics. She had been participating in public education on coronavirus prevention before she tested positive. The minister also said she had followed all regulations but still tested positive and is encouraging the public to adhere to safety measures. Well, after 28 days without any new cases of coronavirus, Mauritius has recorded 2 new cases. The 2 patients are among 149 Mauritians, including 3 babies who were repatriated from India on the 9th of May on a special Air Mauritius flight. This development comes 2 weeks after Health Minister Kailesh Jaguptal said that the island nation had won the battle against COVID-19, although he added that the war against the virus was still on. Now, every May 25th is celebrated as Africa Day, a day where the continent commemorates its journey of Pan-Africanism. Now, 57 years ago, in 1963, Africa made history with the foundation of the Organization of African Unity. The Organization of African Unity was post-colonial Africa's first continent-wide association of independent states, founded by 32 countries and based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The OAU was later dissolved in 2002 when the African Union replaced it. Since the OAU's formation, Africa Day has been observed every May 25th and is intended to acknowledge the progress that Africa has made while reflecting upon the common challenges that the continent faces in a global environment. This year's celebrations will happen virtually and online due to the massive impact of COVID-19 on the continent and the world under the theme Silencing the Guns, Creating Conducive Conditions for Africa's Development and Intensifying the Fight Against the COVID-19 Pandemic. Well, joining us now to discuss more on the celebrations of Africa Day is the Executive Director of the One Campaign Africa, Edwin Ukwara. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and happy Africa Day to you.
Thank you for having me, and happy Africa Day to you too.
Now, this year, Africa and also the world is grappling with an unprecedented challenge, making this year's Africa Day slightly different, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what should Africa be celebrating today?
Oh, there's a lot for Africa to celebrate. Number one, in the absence of, global leadership to end the pandemic, Africa demonstrated that they are still a united front. They created the Africa, continental strategy to fight COVID-19. So the spirit of, coming together, the spirit of Ubuntu, as we call it, is still reigning on the African continent. So you could see that African leaders decided, together to begin to make all the external calls. Right now, they are pulling together, creating a pool fund so that they could buy testing kits and reagents and PPEs together. That's the kind of, spirit of solidarity that we are celebrating today. And we think that has also been demonstrated in the fight against COVID-19. So yes, there's still a lot to celebrate. Again, apart from that, our culture, our music, everything else that make us truly unique.
Yeah, and this pandemic is an impediment in this year's celebration. Right now, we have over 100,000 cases and sadly, more than 3,000 dead. This crisis also brings to the fore the significant gaps and deficiencies in public health systems across the continent. How would you say the continent has fared, in fighting COVID-19?
I would say we have been a bit spared on the health front in terms of the number of cases that we are seeing. We are still seeing the lists, community transmissions globally as we compare to other places, but we have been hit economically, and I think that is the biggest part that has really affected us because Africa acted swiftly. Africa determined that we're going to do lockdown. About 42 countries on the continent did total lockdown. And so that is why you see that early response, mainly coming from the lessons that we have learned from Ebola in the previous years, helped to curb the spread of the coronavirus. So in that sense, the response has been swift in that sense. But again, it came with its own crisis, the financial crisis or the economic crisis that comes out of that. So lockdowns means that people who are working daily, who earn their living daily, are not able to earn a living. And that means also sending a lot of people, back into poverty. So these are the issues that we have there. But more importantly as well is that Africa has come to realize that when you don't invest in your health system, right, you are definitely you are jeopardizing your economic growth. That's what we have come to see. When the human resource, is not well, it's not healthy, when they don't have access to a resilient, effective, or working health system, they come out, worse off. And the country can be shut down. This is what we have seen here right now. So response has been in several ways, but I think we are in the right path.
Let's dissect this year's theme, which is silencing the guns and also intensifying, the fight against COVID-19. To what extent would you say the AU, has gone in bringing peace into the continent and actually silencing the guns?
Okay, now that is that is multifaceted. First of all, there have been several pacts that have been signed at the continental level, and several structures or institutions that have been created to respond to this. All of the forces that are trying to enforce peace in different countries. As of today, we still got about 14 African countries that one form of conflict or insurgency or insecurity is happening at the moment, right? But the biggest thing here is that Africa has a huge youth population that are not employed, that are available for this kind of radicalization, and that are also expressing themselves in violence. And what the continent has been doing so far before now has been a military response. Basically, how do we ensure peace through, facilitating conversations between countries or warring factions? But what we've been trying to get the African continent to see is that we should be dealing with this from the root causes. Basically, how do you engage people who are available for this violence, who are easily radicalized because they have nothing else to do? And this is what we think is the next frontier, is the next level. So they begin to move from all of the military response that have been happening in the previous, before now, to going towards a more proactive economic agenda that can give people opportunities and they are not available, to be involved in violence. But I think this is a time where it is becoming realistic. It's becoming easy to see that when people are not engaged, when people are not productive, violence is definitely going to come when people are hungry. And that's what we are seeing right now.
All right, then the Executive Director of the One Campaign Africa, Edwin Nkora, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, in the spirit of celebrations of Africa Day, movie star Idris Elba will on Monday evening host a star-studded virtual concert to mark Africa Day and to raise funds to feed those in need on the continent. The MTV-based Africa Day benefit concert at home will host the continent's top music stars, including Angelique Kidjo, Burna Boy, Salif Keita, Davido, Tiwa Savage, Diamond Platnumz and Salty Soul. It will be streamed on YouTube and Viacom CBS networks. Idris Elba says he hopes the corporations on the continent would contribute to the initiative, as the priority of the concert is to try and get as many real-time meals into people's mouths. At the moment, hunger is the main fear as opposed to actual COVID-19. Happy Africa Day to you. And that's where we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.